Hey, what's up guys, Tommy here, back again with another video. Today I'm going to be going over all the things that I dislike about my Enduro e-bike. Now don't get me wrong, just because I'm making this video doesn't mean I actually dislike my Enduro e-bike. I still love this thing, there's so many great things I have to say about it. But just like everything else, it's not perfect and it certainly does have its flaws. These are things that I think everybody should be aware of, especially if you're looking to buy your own Enduro e-bike. Now if you haven't already, make sure to go ahead, hit that like button, leave a nice comment down below, and most importantly subscribe so I can continue to make more great videos like this. Without further ado, let's get right into it. What is this? Alright, check out, I'm about to shred these wood chips. Oh, ah. Oh my god! Ah! Did I jump? Ooh, got a little air. Looks like there's a whole bunch of trails over here, so this is kind of nice for a video. And then we got Ealing's Park over there. Starting out with issue number 1, and this is mostly an off-roading issue, but it also does apply on the streets. Because this thing has a very large hub motor, it does tend to have sort of like this counterbalance issue. So what I'm getting at is you have like 50 pounds in the very rear of this bike, so when you're cornering and stuff, especially off-road where you know you have loose dirt and wood chips and gravel and stuff, what tends to happen is your rear wheel slides out. This also does happen on the road, but it's more of a problem when you're off-roading. Now this is the only hub motor driven bike that I've ever owned. I had a Sur-Ron and then I've had a couple gas pit bikes, which are all mid-drive, and I never really had that issue on those bikes. So definitely if you're looking to get an Enduro e-bike, especially one with a very large counterweight in the rear, aka hub motor, that's definitely something you should be aware of. You know, maybe if you're thinking, oh, I want to get an Enduro e-bike because I have all these trails by my house and I want to go off-roading with it. Now what you can do to sort of counteract this is get a smaller hub motor. Like I could run the same amount of power through like a 5,000 watt hub motor that's maybe weighs 15 pounds less. The only problem is because you're running more power through a smaller hub motor, it might be prone to heating issues. Other than that, I mean, unless you go with a mid-drive motor, there's not a whole lot you can do to counteract that. But anyways, that's my first problem that I have with this bike. It's just a huge counterweight in the rear. And I mean, as you get more skilled with riding this bike, it definitely becomes less apparent to you that you have this big weight in the very rear of the bike. But it is something that you should be aware of while riding this bike. Man, this is a interesting trail. I didn't even know there was a trail here. Let's see if I get yelled at. So issue number 2 I have with this bike is speed wobbles. Now I've noticed once I reach about 40 miles per hour, the front of the bike tends to start shaking, and then it sort of goes away once I hit about 50 to 60 miles per hour. I've noticed that this is also a problem that occurs with other people's Enduro e-bikes. You know, I've seen it in the comments, people are like, yo, my bike starts to shake once I reach this certain speed. Do you know how to fix it? And honestly, I really don't. Maybe it's like a weight balance problem, but I really couldn't tell you. It seems to be a common problem with these Enduro e-bikes that I really have no idea how to fix. I'll go ahead and get up to like 40 miles per hour so maybe you can get an idea. So yeah, you might have noticed that my hand started shaking once I reached about 45 miles per hour. I really don't know why this happens exactly. I'm sure it's like some sort of weight balance issue, you know, because there's sort of a lot of weight in the rear of this bike, and then it gets a little bit lighter as you move up towards the front of the bike. Other than that, I have no idea. All I know is that it happens to my bike, and it seems to be a common issue with other people's Enduro e-bikes. With all that being said, issue number 3 is lack of foot peg options. Now I know I'm in a different area than I just was, but I went home and checked the footage and I realized that the audio was really bad because there was a lot of wind noise. But there's no foot peg options. Like, if you want foot pegs for this thing, you have to make your own. And now I know a lot of people disagree with me on the foot peg thing. Like, they're like, it's an Enduro e-bike, you know, you use pedals for it, you know what I'm saying? But in my opinion, it's like, it's so powerful, why would I want to use pedals for it? I'm not going to be able to actually pedal it anyway. At least in my area, like, even though this thing looks like a motorcycle, the cops do not give a crap about where I ride it. Like, I ride on the bike path, I ride on roads. As long as I'm being safe, like, nobody really bats an eye. I probably passed like 3 or 4 cops today, and none of them really even acknowledged me. So in my opinion, it's just kind of silly to have pedals on this thing. So, you know, when I found out that you can't just like buy foot pegs for this thing or some sort of like conversion kit so that you could put foot pegs on it, I was a little bit saddened by that, you know what I'm saying? Like I wanted foot pegs, I didn't want pedals. Now I do have foot pegs on this thing, but they're very small, kind of uncomfortable. I made them myself. They cost like $5, and I guess they're okay, but I wish you could just like buy foot pegs, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, so I realized that the video was going to be pretty short if I just stuck to the GoPro footage I was using, because I really didn't record as much as I thought. Now it's just a little conversation between me and you, and I'm going to keep going, keep bashing on this bike, absolutely just bashing this thing into the ground. No more GoPro footage, and yes, I am wearing an America do-rag, and no, there's nothing you can do about it. So for the next issue that I have with this thing, and I've actually noticed that it seems to have gotten more frequent the more comfortable that I've gotten with this bike, is overheating. More specifically with the controller. Now this might not be an issue that occurs for everybody, because depending on the configuration you have, you know, what controller you have, what motor you have, you know, where you have your controller located, this might not even be an issue that's on the radar, but for me it definitely is, especially when I'm going uphill. The reason this used to not be an issue for me was because I used to ride a lot slower. Like I'd cruise around at like 25 miles per hour, just being, you know, Mr. Super Safety. And you know, maybe I should do that more often for my own good, but as I've gotten more comfortable with this bike, I've started to use more power, and especially when I start going up hills, you know, really fast, you know, going up the mountains, which are, you know, near my house, you know, I'm going uphill for miles and miles at a time. This thing does tend to overheat. What happens when it overheats is it just sort of slows down and doesn't let you use full power anymore. You can kind of feel it if you touch the frame. You can feel that the heat is transferring from the controller into the frame. I figure maybe there's some things that I can do to combat this, like cut some slots maybe in the side of my frame so it lets the heat escape, or hell, maybe even move my controller to the bottom of the frame. It's just, I feel like this is kind of a bummer for me because I really do like the sort of sleek look of my bike. You know, how I have it is I have the controller and the battery, everything on the inside of the frame. It looks really sleek and futuristic, but unfortunately for performance reasons, I might actually end up either moving the controller onto the outside of the bike or having to cut slots on the inside of the frame. Another thing that I think you can do to actually combat this is just use a bigger controller. So my friend, his bike actually uses a little bit more power than mine, but his controller is a Sabaton 72 200 amp controller, where mine's a 72 150 amp controller. So his controller's actually about 2 inches longer. Now because he's using a bigger controller, and because I don't even think he's actually using the full power of that controller, there's just more area for that heat to sort of spread out. So at the end of the day, his controller actually does not get as hot as mine. So maybe if you're thinking of building your own Enduro e-bike, and maybe you want to run 150 amps, it might be a smart idea to get a 200 amp controller, because that way you're going to be less prone to overheating. I think it only costs like $50 more, so it's not like you're spending, you know, all this money to get a bigger controller just to solve some heating issues. It's really a pretty cheap fix. And I think that this has been one of my biggest issues with this bike. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video. This was really just me going over all of my problems and issues that I have with this bike, because of course this thing is not perfect and it does have its issues. These are just things that I think that you should be aware of. I remember I made a video sort of similar to this on my 010X scooter, which is something I used to make a whole lot of videos on. I still own that scooter, I just don't make videos on it anymore because it's been out of order and it's just not really worth it for me to fix anymore. But I remember I got a whole lot of hate for making that video on the things that I dislike about that scooter. People were like, yo, you don't like your scooter anymore? Like, what's up? Like, you used to say you liked it. And I was like, I didn't really say that specifically. So yeah, don't get me wrong with this video. I still like my Enduro e-bike. I still have a whole lot of fun with it. This is just me addressing the problems and issues that I have with this bike. Anyways, yeah, if you guys own your own Enduro e-bikes and you have problems with yours, go ahead and comment the issues that you have with your Enduro e-bike, and I'll make sure to go down in the comments and read all of them. And I think that's a wrap for this video. If you haven't already, make sure to go ahead, hit that like button, leave a nice comment down below, and most importantly, subscribe, and I will see you guys soon in the next one. Later.
I like suddenly slowed down because there's a bunch of gravel, and then I look behind me and there's a car like riding my ass. That's why it's you know, fun to ride here, but it's also dangerous at the same time. There's so much gravel lying around. I don't know what's up with that.